Okay, so now we're gonna throw a bowl. You wanna start out with your block of clay, and just like normal, you wanna wedge the clay. So a quick refresher on wedging: pull back towards yourself, hands on the sides, push away. Pull back towards yourself, hands on the sides, thumbs on that top ridge, and push away. You wanna keep wedging your clay until it softens and all of the clay particles become a little more homogeneous. Okay, so now it looks like Donald Duck with an underbite. With force, I'm gonna pull back towards myself and pound it into a ball. One of the most important things with a bowl is how you prep the clay. If you look at the bottom of my clay, there's no creases, there's no gaps. Oftentimes, when people wedge their clay, they have like an imperfection on the bottom, and I really force myself to make it nice and round, because as this pushes down onto my wheel head, it's gonna splat out, and you wanna make sure that you don't have any cracks. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is clean my bat. Hopefully your bat is not a mess. If it is, you want to clean it. If you are using a plastic bat, I would suggest, if you have to clean it, you also dry it off, because you don't want your clay to go sliding. I'm throwing on a plaster bat, so my bat absorbs the water differently. Okay, so now I'm just going to use one little dot of water. I'm going to press the clay into the middle, give it a couple of good taps, and clean up on the edge. Once it's cleaned up on the edge, again, I'm going to really squeeze my hands together, round down around the sides to get all the clay to connect. The difference between a tumbler, a cup, and a bowl is the diameter of clay that's centered on your wheel head. So now that I know the clay is connected, now we're gonna start centering. So I'm gonna put pressure on the outside of the clay. I use the pressure of my thumbs to help squeeze the clay up into a cone. I keep my left hand on the clay, or you can take both of your hands off to clean them. And remember, you want the heel of your hand to be on the side, but the fat part of your thumb over the top. Your right pinky kisses your left thumb, and bring the clay back down. Now, if you notice, I'm letting the clay come out into my left hand. So I'm making this clay slightly wider. So I'm bringing the clay out into my left hand, thinking about the width of this hunk of clay before I begin. So now that I am centered, we're gonna start opening up the clay. So I go the fastest when I'm centering, and now I'm gonna slow down a little bit. So I'm gonna put a little tiny bit of water in the middle. My fingertips go at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, right next to my knees. I use my right thumb in the middle. Lefties, you can switch and have your left thumb in the middle. And I'm just making a little bit of an indent. Right now my fingers are starting to stick, so I'm not gonna persevere. I wanna make sure that I don't have a ton of friction, so I wanna use as much water as I need at this stage. And now I'm gonna bend my right thumb, pressing into the clay down to my first knuckle. I can get a little more water, and now I'm gonna press into the clay until I have about this much below my thumb, between my thumb and the wheel head. And then I'm gonna squeeze out towards my right hand. Lefties, you can squeeze towards your left hand if you would like. And I'm only opening up the clay till I'm about 3 finger widths wide. If you start to get this edge right here, like I'm getting right now, it's okay, but you can open up your clay like a lobster claw. So I can use my left hand on the inside and my right hand over the top. So I'm gonna compress this as I'm opening, but my thumb is still on the outside of the clay to make sure that it doesn't splay out. So now I've opened my clay up. I'm 3 finger widths wide, and it's nice and straight on the sides. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, I'm gonna compress in the middle. And again, I'm not doing anything one-handed. My left hand is holding onto my right wrist and I'm pulling towards my right knee. Really try your best to use a clean sponge. And now I'm gonna start raising my walls. So this starts out the same as everything else. Same as a tumbler, same as a cup. The difference is that this is wider. So my hands are connected. I'm squeezing out with my left hand from the inside of the clay and catching with my right hand to slowly start to bring the clay up. As I get towards the top, I'm gonna let off pressure, so I'm not gonna squeeze as hard. And then gently and slowly up and away from the clay. My hands are totally connected. I did it with my sponge. You're more than welcome to just use your fingertips to raise your walls. You can use your sponge, or you can use your wooden rib. And you could use this to raise your walls as well. So it's all the same thing. A tool is there to help you. If you don't find it to be helpful, don't use it. As I get to the top, I'm letting off pressure and coming away. I'm not gonna really spend much time dealing with the top lip at the moment. I am gonna compress on the inside. So if you look at my bowl right now, it's really straight and squared off on the outside. The inside side is slightly round. When you throw a bowl, you wanna throw from the inside to the outside. Get the shape that you're hoping to achieve on the inside. You can always trim away the outside to make a parallel line so that it matches up. I'm gonna check my thickness before I go on. I'm gonna go all the way through, drop my index finger to where the clay meets my needle and check. And I wanna be that 1 finger width thick. To get rid of that hole, I'm just gonna compress a little bit. If I needed to push down more, if it was too thick, just push down slightly harder with your sponge. Mine was a decent thickness, so I'm not pushing terribly hard. Just rounding it on the inside. So now I'm still quite thick, so I'm gonna make my walls taller, but no bending happens, so I'm gonna throw 100% straight. Don't try to bend your walls until the very end. When people try to bend too early, their clay flops. As I get to the top, I'm gonna let off pressure and come away. I'm not even gonna deal with the fact that that's wobbling yet. It doesn't matter. Okay. I throw with very little moisture at this point. Okay, so now my clay is fairly dried out. Now I'm gonna trim the top lip, then we're gonna start to address shape, okay? To trim the top lip, don't forget you wanna rest your right arm on your right leg. Lefties, you wanna turn your wheel off, change direction, and do this 100% at 9 o'clock with your left hand. So I'm gonna hold that diagonal edge at the base of my needle. My left hand is going to be my hinge. My left thumb is resting on top of my right thumb. My left middle finger is resting on the inside wall of my vessel. All the way through, and I can lift, or you can turn your wheel off and pick it up. Once you've cleaned it up, you can either round it with your sponge or your fingers, or you can use the beveling edge of your Dirty Girls tool. Again, I'm trying my best to not do anything one-handed. It's just a nice way to round out. And these walls are still fairly thick because I'm going to still work on shaping. Okay, so before I do anything with shape, there's a couple different ways that you can work on your shape. You can use any combination of the rubber rib tools that you've got. You can also use this angle on your Dirty Girls beveling tool for the start of your bowl. So I'm gonna do a combination of these things. I'm gonna start out with my rib tools. Remember that the red rib tools are super flexible. And then you've got blue, yellow, and green that are all slightly more firm. It depends on your personal preference. I'm gonna start out with these two. And if I'm gonna use this rib tool, I'm gonna hold my index finger over the button and I'm gonna use the rounded edge. I don't want any dry clay on the edge of the tool. And when I use the red ribs, I have the wide part at the bottom, the narrow part at the top, and I always use the curved edges towards the clay. This is the only thing I do where my arms are separated. My left elbow is gonna come way up into my ribs. I'm gonna press out with my inside tool until the clay starts to form around it. And now I'm just gonna catch with my rib that's in my right hand and slowly work vertically. And if you take a look, I'm really working on the inside shape and I'm going to get to that outside shape, but it also starts to thin out my walls. So I can continue to use the rib tools. I'm gonna show you how to use this one as well. So my bowl is already taller than this angle, so I'm only gonna use my inside hand and press along this edge until the top end of it. So this is just gonna help me to eliminate some of this weight at the bottom, and it'll give me a starting point. So I'm gonna hold the button. My whole tool needs to be on my bat. I'm gonna slightly pull towards me and my hands are working together. So I'm gonna push out from the inside. And now I'm starting to work my inside hand up. I'm towards that top lip right now, so I'm gonna slowly come away. And you can see how it's starting to shape the outside. And now I can use that and dart my eyes inside and out. Again, I'm thinking about my shape from the inside to the outside and slowly working my clay up. I know that I can turn this over and trim at the end. So I'm only gonna think about my outside shape so much. I'm gonna think about my inside shape more than anything. And I'm really gonna dry out my walls. I'm gonna trim my top lip one more time, and then I'm gonna push out the edges. It's really dry, and that's a good thing. You want to push all of those clay particles as close as possible to prevent cracks in the kiln. So now I'll compress my lip the other way. I'm just gonna use my sponge. I'm holding the edge with my left fingers just to keep it from curving. Okay, so now that structurally it looks pretty good. Now I need to think about the final shape. So I'm gonna push this out a little bit more. Maybe I wanna turn this into a ramen bowl. So I want it to be a little bit wider so that there's enough space. I'm gonna push out with my inside rib. again one last time. Just gonna dry out my walls. Make sure this is nice and round. And this last step is optional, but if you would like to try cutting in, you can try to finish off that parallel line from the inside to the outside using your wood stick. So using my wood tool, I'm gonna hold this like a pencil with the point facing down. My left hand is just gonna rest on my bat, and I'm gonna cut over my left hand. I'm gonna grab some of the clay and then cut at an angle to the base till I go all the way around. I'm gonna come back out that same crack. Loosen all of that without re-sticking it to my clay. Cut it and pull away to expose my shape. And now I'm ready to let it dry enough that I can flip it over on a foam bat and trim my foot.